President William Ruto is on flight out to South Korea in his second trip to the Asian nation since inauguration and 52nd trip since inauguration, 52nd trip outside the country. And the question is about the significance of these trips. It's coming just a week after spending 4 days in the United States of America. So much have been spoken about these foreign trips, but I want us to delve deep and ask the most important questions in respect to this trip to South Korea. Kindly subscribe to our channel. But first I want to mention that if you are traveling or you are looking for opportunity that you want to move from one place to the other, then you need to work with a reliable company. And that is why I recommend to you Topmark Movers. Topmark Movers is the best company in Kenya to help you relocate for your office from one place to the other, or even move your items up country. Contact them here. The number is 0719 17 43 93. 0719 17 43 93. Topmark Movers. Quality is everything. There is photos of the president leaving the airport, and he was actually seen off at the airport. His the deputy president Rigathi Gachagua, and a host of other leaders. And of course, the country was paying attention as to whether his friends were going to donate another luxury jet to South Korea, or he was going to use the commercial, he's going to have a chartered plane. So what we realized later is the State House team deliberately failed to show us the jet. And probably they wanted that speculation because the country was waiting to see how this was going to work. And I don't know whether his friends maybe this time round they did not, or they didn't have an interest about South Korea, because this is the photo that was then taken. This is what has been shared by some of Ruto's bloggers. And there are three gentlemen there. President. The other person on the far end is the president of African Development Bank. He's a Nigerian, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina. And again, the middle, I think, is also someone, is also a foreigner, I want to believe. I don't think, he's not a minister, he's not someone in Kenyan government. But with the profile of African Development Bank president there, then it means that even the person in the middle must be a very serious fellow. So, you know, we were expecting maybe a minister there, would have appointed maybe treasury or someone. But it first paints the impression that president is out on some foreign trip and no Kenyan had been seen in that delegation. But of course, I believe there are a number of Kenyans there. So there are three concerns, the three issues that have been raised on the South Korea flight. And the first one is, this is the second trip since November 2022. Just 2 months after inauguration, Ruto was in South Korea, and there are some deliverables that were supposed to be, maybe Kenya was supposed to get there, but believe me, that has not been effected. And let me just share with you a snippet of Ruto's speech in South Korea then. So that is what the country is talking about. There are things we were expecting by then. This is the second trip after then, just within 2 years, but not so much.
And digitization of services. The Republic of Korea, ladies and gentlemen, has more to expect by taking the vantage position of growing trade and investment ties with Africa. I am glad to be here to witness Korea reaffirm commitment to growing relations with Africa, not only to support Africa's development aspirations, but to nurture the economic benefits of engaging Africa's estimated $3 trillion GDP market, as FCTA has the potential to increase intra-Africa trade to 50%, therefore creating opportunities for investments across many sectors of strategic interest to Korea. Africa needs to fire up its light manufacturing sector with the agro-based industries and integrate the comparative advantage into a transformative economic model, and which will lift national economies and raise the welfare of many from the bottom up. From its vast arable land in Africa, which is estimated at almost 40% of the continent's landmass, spurring agricultural sector through full use of its capacity has the potential to feed the human race and yield technological breakthrough to place Africa in the driving seat of global productivity.
But then the second aspect is what has changed. William Ruto is on record speaking in the country here that never again will he be part of the team that will fly with African presidents, that the world, the other countries in Europe, normally consolidate 54 African presidents and ask them to go and meet one man in Europe. And we were expecting, of course he said that in South Africa, and then also last year during a Mo Foundation interview, I think here, interactive session in Nairobi, he vouched that African presidents are always being mistreated. But just a year later, he's also embracing that.
Leaders or whatever to behave in a better way. African people need to tell their presidents, we care about Africa. That should be a priority. Unless we act really together, it doesn't work. And in the reform agenda of the African Union, if you and your colleagues are proceeding that way, there need to be really a serious discussion about the structures and how Africa is. One problem is African countries refuse to cede any sovereignty to the African Union. So African Union cannot sign a trade agreement in the heart of Africa. Then the African Union go and meet the European Union. This is not balanced.
It is not.
Because those guys had
27 countries,
and gave them sovereignty.
Yes.
But our guys here don't want to give any sovereignty, cede any sovereignty to the Union, as if, you know, this is something very fantastic they have to keep. When countries like Germany, like big countries, agreed to cede sovereignty to the collective body because they are smart, they think when they are together, they negotiate better deals.
Are you
the
saying
only stupid guys, unfortunately, are the British, who left that collection. But look, I'm free to say that because I'm also a British citizen, and so I have my views about what happened in Britain. I know we have British. Jane is there, the High Commissioner, and the Archbishop, and I have the Minister here also. But do you agree with me it was a mistake to leave the European Union? You agree? You're going to lose your job, I think.
The decision that we have made as AU is that going forward, if there is going to be a discussion between Africa and any other country, we are going to be represented by the chair, the outgoing chair, the bureau.
The chair of the commission, or the chair,
and the chair of the Rex, and we have 5 Rex. That should be sufficient for, I mean, a meeting of maybe 6, 7. Yeah. That should be able to represent Africa, and that is the position I am taking as the President of Kenya. For any other meeting that we are going to have with all these requests that we have a meeting between Africa and one other country. We respect the sovereignty of others. I think to ask for reciprocation is not to ask for too much.
No.
and for us to agree that let us have this kind of setup. The only, because I had a conversation with President Kagame, and he actually led that particular position. I have had a conversation with Prime Minister Abiy. He believes very strongly that that should be the position of our continent. Because, as you have said, if we don't respect ourselves, nobody is going to respect us. And we should be able to take that kind of decision. Yeah. And part of that respecting ourselves is when we say African problems, African solutions. We must be serious about the solutions. It cannot be rhetoric. It cannot be talk. It must be accompanied by what realistically and practically we are doing.
So what has changed? And this points out to the level of hypocrisy, because when you speak about something, you should always have your stand. You should always stand with it, like, I'm not going to do it. And he attended Italy African Summit. He attended the US African Summit. He's now attending the South Korean Summit. The only summit he didn't attend is Russia African Summit. And I will look at that sometime later, because there is some critical information on it. Ruto has really got himself in a big quagmire with Russia just because of that. So, but of course it was because of Russia-Ukraine war, and he was aligning with Ukraine, since it's also American position. So that seems to have changed. Then the third issue is, what is the benefit of that trip to Kenya? And I want us to give it a very I want us to give it a very deep approach by just asking critical question on what is the business value, because we are struggling with economic partnership agreements, EPA, and some other agreements that will open Kenyan market for South Korea and South Korean market for Kenya. Believe me, this is what we are saying. Kenya imported some 50 billion worth of goods from South Korea, but only 10% of that value was exported. So ourselves, we imported. South Korea exported to us. South Korea imported, so us we imported rather. 50 billion. But what we've dispatched to South Korea, what we have exported to South Korea is only 10%. So like 5 billion. What does this point to? If you look at officials, the data at the treasury, at the South Korean treasury, they're saying that they are also looking market for the exports, because that is the trajectory they are going to take to boost the economy. Remember, their population is only 50 million. So in terms of consumables, you rather have an economic partnership agreement with Germany or the European nations or even the United States, because the population is huge, or even UK or United Arab Emirates. But one country, South Korea, has a population of 50 million, which is fairly the population of Kenya. So that is really a big issue. And just on that, there is this big concern that during the last meeting, there's some few things that were agreed there. The summit that is supposed to, not that, last meeting, there's a 131 billion credit facility that was to be advanced to us under framework arrangement partnership. However, that actual disbursement depends on the Korean parliament approving every funding request. So President Ruto had called on Korean lawmakers, South Korean lawmakers, to pass legislation that will ease the trade restrictions on Kenya and Africa in general. In real sense, there is a lot of talk, and even the clip I've played for you, there is a lot of talk on Africa relationship with Korea, and Ruto is not really talking about the Kenyan aspect. So on business ground, really not so much can attributed to it. So it's happening, and of course we are going to pay more attention to this. It's happening just a week after the US trip. South Korea is a very strong ally of US. And they even, I think during the South Korean War, during the Korean War, the 1950s, I think that was 1953, 1954, when South Korea, when the Soviet Union, China backed up the North Korea, and actually the South Korea were actually losing, US came to salvage the South Korea. They even do joint military drills. They do joint military drills with the US. So they're very strong allies. We are going to look at are there advancements from what maybe was agreed on US that will also be seen on the other end. So we're going to pay attention. Make sure you keep it here. We covered exclusively the US summit. Even this one, for the days that President will be there, apart from there is Korea African Summit, any other bilateral agreements that will be out, we are here. And we'll make sure that you get every bit of it. So let's look at the flying presidents. Why do we normally have a problem with the African presidents flying? There is a statistic that was done. No, not a statistic. There is an article that was done by BBC that of African flying presidents, and the two African most flying presidents in Africa is President Ruto and Bola Tinubu. Is it Tinubu or Tinubu? Tinubu, yes. My producer is telling me it's called Tinubu. Tinubu. So they are the most flying presidents. In the first 8 months of his presidency in Nigeria, the Nigerian president, the 20-year-old president, has gone out of the country 14 times. In Kenya, for the last 18 months, the President Ruto has gone out 52 times. That is more than the 10 years that Uhuru Kenyatta was out. And what the African countries have been asking is, even despite the fact, by the way, the two are the most flying presidents. Even on this one, do you know Museveni has not gone? Museveni has sent his deputy, Jessica Lupo. It's only Tanzanian president is there. That is Suluhu. But Mama Suluhu is there on a 6-day visit. So the summit is just part of our deliberation, but he's been there. After yesterday, I think he was given, he was conferred a honorary degree in the aviation sector by Korean Aerospace University. The degree was presented to her June 3rd by university's president. So we're paying a lot of attention, and the reason why the African population have a big question on this is because it does not translate. It has not translated to any tangible transformation in Africa. For example, look at the cost. William Ruto's foreign and domestic travel has costed the taxpayers 1.3 billion in this financial year. That is 30% excess of last financial year. And as we are saying that, do you know that JSS teachers are yet to be employed? We've spent 1.3 billion. So if we spent these billions looking for money and development of the country, why aren't we getting money to pay JSS teachers? By the way, the media is so silent. I think we are doing some injustice to JSS. Those fellows have been protesting for the last 6 months, asking, just give us pensionable contracts. Even we don't even want to negotiate a huge salary. The salary you're going to give us, but let it be a pensionable and a permanent contract. Just that. And we failed to do it. So that's one of the challenges with it. Now, interestingly, the similarities between the two presidents, between those presidents that are flying most, they're normally pro-West. Yes. Look at the Nigerian president. Recently, Nigeria changed. Nigeria reverted to its colonial era national anthem, and parliament was rushed. It was actually the anthem was written by the Briton. They were colonized by the British. So they reverted back to that colonial era anthem. And it shows you the way, really, even those, there is no evidence that's showing that those African presidents that fly most are the ones that are performing best. In Nigeria, things are not good. Insecurity is a big problem. Electricity is a big problem. and the economy is not, actually they had one of the worst inflations, if I remember last month. So there is that understanding that more even as you go west, but it doesn't translate into something tangible. So looking at this, I can just make 3 observations from here. Ruto fancy these trips and advancing purely African interests. I am not seeing Korean Africa Summit directly beneficial to Kenya. And if you were fair, having gone to US just the other week, you would have just sent your deputy, or even have sent your foreign affairs minister. He would have represented you in this. Because I'm not seeing surely anything for Kenya here. South Korea themselves, they're just looking for market. In fact, they are summoning, they're meeting these African presidents. They might have some few loans here and there. But if you look at like what they're offering for Kenya, they're looking for market themselves. They're producers of Samsung, if I'm not wrong. Mr. Producer, they're producing Samsung. So if they're producing Samsung, then that means they're also looking for market for Samsung. One of the biggest marketers for Samsung is Mike Mbuvi Sonko. You have the largest shop for Samsung in Kenya. The other second observation I'm making is actualization of these promissory notes from foreign nations is a big miss. There is a lot of good deals on paper, so much written on paper, but not all that is getting actualized, and that should be the concern for the duty bearers. And again, lastly, I think Musalia Mudavadi will have to account to a big question. Our foreign policy doesn't seem to be aligned by even that better goal. Better goal is the anchor of President Ruto's power. Bottom-up economic transformation agenda. So I am not saying that our foreign policy, you may just want to ask, what do you have for Hustler in this trip? I cannot see. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my take. Thank you, and let's meet in the next.